Greetings, fellow thinkers and drinkers, and once again, Deep Purple fans. Yes, back, one of my more popular choices, I suppose, but this time a viewer request. Now, I would have gotten around to this at some point, but as I've said in many of my reviews of the more recent releases or re-releases, sometimes there are occasions you have to spend time with these things to fully appreciate them, evaluate them, and put them in some position in the hierarchy. Initial impressions can change quickly or over time, but in this case, since I've had this for over a year now, I think this is a reasonable time to do it. Okay, enough of the suspense. We are talking about Deep Purple's latest studio effort, obviously, equals 1. A little bit of background to this, I suppose, is relevant to the review. I was personally disappointed that Steve Morse left the band. Well, this is not the place to discuss the whys and wherefores of that, but, and obviously, the personal tragedy that involved in his life necessitated, I suppose, his departure at the time. But whatever other issues there are surrounding that, not the place to discuss them here. Simon McBride was it wasn't a huge surprise, given his past association with Don Airey and Ian Gillan, and the fact that he had ably stepped into the breach in a live capacity when it was thought that they just needed a temporary fill-in. Obviously, the experience convinced the band that this was the guy they needed. As far as I know, no other name was ever considered. But yeah, I knew very little about him apart from the fact he played on those 2 live albums, didn't he, that were recorded in Russia with Ian Gillan and Don Airey. And I still haven't checked out his solo catalogue. I must be honest, I've been quite lax in that regard, but never mind. So obviously one was curious to see what effect his being brought into the band was going to have on the music. And let's be fair, when this has happened before, Blackmore being replaced by Tommy Bolin, and Blackmore again being replaced by Steve Morse, the changes have been somewhat dramatic and, to put it at least, I think, very noticeable. Again, is it possible to listen to either Come Taste the Band or Perpendicular and imagine those records having been made with Blackmore in the band? Well, I can't. So given all that, and given the fact that I wasn't too aware of his style, his music, I was a little unsure, I suppose, what to expect. But I have to expect, I think I expected a slightly more dramatic change, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. Anyway, what did we actually get? Well, album opens in pretty good style, I think. Show me, nice groovy riff, and it's a nice opening statement. Hello and welcome to the new band, welcome to the new album. It's a nice driving rocker. It's got really good dynamics that we've become accustomed to from at least the previous incarnation of the band. But I do think this is a really strong opener, and I'm a little surprised that they didn't play it live. I think it would have made a really strong show opener, and something new in that department I don't think would go amiss. Some nice interplay between Mr. McBride and Don Airey on the solos, and noticeably Don continuing his tradition of not sticking to the Hammond, and in this case he regales us with actually a rather enjoyable, I think, Moog solo, or at least it sounds like a Moog to me. We move on. Second track, A Bit on the Side. comes across as a little heavier, I think. Very strong underlying riff, the rhythm section very prominent in this. It's certainly musically heavier than the opener. I have to say that the vocal melodies, especially on the verses, are strongly reminiscent of Rosa's Cantina. Having said that, I think the track growls along really nicely. It's something that will become a feature of this album. There's a very, very strong pre-chorus chorus on this. It really grabs your attention. And again, I have to say, their ability to channel perhaps simple but incredibly effective musical dynamics is very apparent here. This is a really, really strong track. And I really like McBride's guitar solo on this. It's nice. It stands out. It's dirty. It's gritty. This is not a solo Steve Morse would have played, if we're using that as any sort of yardstick. It makes his mark on this one. I really like it. Okay, we scoot along to Sharp Shooter, the third song. Again, starts in a nice, imposing manner, but starts at least, and it sort of devolves into quite a relaxed, I would say, rock and roll number on the verses. But again, I think the chorus, pre-chorus, changed the character of the song a bit. It's got more originality to it, perhaps a slightly more progressive aspect to it. But to me, they work a lot better than the verses. They're a little bit, we've heard this sort of thing before. I don't want to say run-of-the-mill, but the verses are not the strong suit of this song. Would have preferred it if they kept the hard, heavy, almost ominous rock feel of the opening song and the chorus, pre-chorus sections, opposed to this sort of rock and roll effect that they have on the verses. Doesn't somehow do it for me. It's not quite as strong, this, because of that, as I think are the opening two songs. Now, Portable Door we were already familiar with prior to the release of the album being the first single. And it has the qualities a single requires. It's got a strong hook, and it does possess that commercial appeal. The necessary shows it, but at no time does it slip into kitsch or anything like that. Or predictability, for that. This is not your average, single construction of a song, I don't think. I really love the lyrics to this one. Again, musically, I have to say, I do think it's very strong. The musical dynamics, again, they may be not revolutionary, I don't know, but they're very effective, and this is a very convincing track. Nice solos, again, from both, but they're not outstanding. Neither of them. Okay, Old Fangled Thing. Gillen should really include a thesaurus or something for the non-native English speaker. Yeah. Looking these things up. It does pick up the pace a little bit. But despite that, it's got a really nice, relaxed feel to it. Musically, again, I think this is very strong. Instantly infectious. And that's down to the vocal melody, I think, on this one. It really stands out. It's great fun. It's an obvious live contender. And again, as I said, as they keep repeating and keep demonstrating here, the very good understanding and implementation or use of, however you wish to express it, musical dynamics. Another pretty good guitar solo on this one from Simon McBride. All around it's a great song. It's an instant earworm. We move on to the first ballad, if I want to call it that. If I Were You. Yes, I suppose it is. It's more of a slow blues than a ballad, but where do you draw the line? I don't know. But this is totally devoid of fromage of any variety. This is it's a slower blues effort, as I said, with Ian Gillan in particularly fine form. And again, very strong, interesting, attention-grabbing chorus, pre-chorus to it. It's an effective change of pace thus far in the sequencing of the album. And I think it's a complete success as a song. And McBride, actually, I have to say his solo on this one It really stands out. I like it. It's his best one so far, maybe. Or maybe not. All right, we move on to Pictures of You, which, again, we've been aware of this prior to the release of the album, being the second single even. Carries on the tradition of Portable Door. There's similarities in the songs and their constructions, but this is very much its own man. Perhaps a tighter construction. But again, it's musically very impressive, very effective. I actually prefer it slightly to Portable Door. But as good as the music is, I really think this is Gillan's song. His vocal melody, his lyrics, his performance, his delivery, I think he really brings it home on this. It's a very strong, great song, standout track for me, yes. We move on. I'm Saying Nothing. Well, no, I'm going to have to say something, aren't I? Yeah. When you listen to this is a very Deep Purple song. And I don't mean just of the Morse area. This is a very Deep Purple sounding song. You do have the feeling they were jamming this out in the studio, the musicians. They really liked it. And Gillan came along and superimposed a vocal melody and lyrics and a vocal melody on top of it. Now, that has worked in the past well, and it has also not worked very well in the past. Sometimes it's perhaps, I don't know, I think a limitation on occasion of their songwriting approach. But in this case even, I think it's pretty good. It's quite a strong effort. It's a little less distinct, however. And I think that is the difference. Whereas the others, what we've heard this far, they sound like organically created, evolved songs. This sounds like there was a piece of music, and Gillan was given to Gillan, and he had to, without any further input, just put a vocal melody and lyrics on top of it. So there's a slight disconnect to it. And again, that has been a feature of Purple's writing over the years. Sometimes, as I said, it has worked, sometimes not. I'm not dissing this, though. I like it. I just don't think it's quite up there with the previous songs on the album. Couple of nice solos, however, do very much come to the rescue. Okay, Lazy Sod. Again, I didn't like this when I first heard it. It's pretty good fun. You can tell they're enjoying this. And it's a rather obvious rock and roll reference, musically at least. Quite a straightforward construction, not only in that terms, but in terms of the rest of the album. But again, it's just one of those things that it gets to you, or at least it got to me. And there is something undeniably infectious about this. And there's a reason they played it live, and there's a reason it works live, and there's a reason it went down well live. So there's absolutely nothing to complain about. Again, had I been reviewing this day 2 or day 3 after first hearing the album, I would not have been that enthusiastic about this song. Yeah, it just shows you do need time sometimes, on occasion. You do need to live with these things. Okay, now you're talking. It picks up the pace again a little bit. There's no out-and-out fast songs on this album, but I think it's probably the most up-tempo they get. And again, it has very strong rock and roll credentials. And again, it works, and I have to say, it does sound like another very natural live song. Can't remember off the top of my head if they played it live. Again, though, I have to say it's maybe not quite as strong as the opening 5 or 6. No Money to Burn. Well, yes, okay, we've got yet another strong effort. And again, I have to say I was initially somewhat nonplussed by this. But over time, it's grown on me. And again, it's another one of those songs, and I've already mentioned a couple, where it's Gillan's vocal melody and performance that takes what could have been an interesting musical idea and turns it into a pretty effective song. Airy solo on this is really good, really great. It really needs to be listened to. I'll Catch You, the second ballad on an album. My God. What is going on here? It's another bluesy, slow bluesy rock song, and it's kind of the same as the previous one. And in terms of song construction, it's pretty typical of those slow, bluesy rock ballad songs. So there's nothing particularly revelatory about this in any musical sense. But again, I think Gillan is really superb on this. It's his, I think, his best performance on the album, and it really does elevate this what's a fairly basic structure. At least that's the initial impression it gives. Yet it is still very impactful. And again, when I first listened to it, I was perhaps somewhat more dismissive of it as I am now. And I would go so far to say as if anybody was going to make let's say, the Wasted Sunsets comparison. Yes, I would understand, but I may actually say that I think this is just a little bit better. It's a grower. And we come to, at the end, finally, what has to be the epic of this particular album. It clocks in at nearly 6 minutes. And musically, this is easily the most ambitious thing on offer here. It's got just about everything. It's got a great heavy intro riff, it's got the menace to it, and it's got some very definite progressive touches to it, especially on the chorus and the middle eight. Yes, they cover an awful lot of ground in these almost 6 minutes. They really do. I would like to have heard more of this type of thing, I'll be honest, on the album. And I think this is seriously, seriously impressive piece of music, song. And it's the one place I could really imagine Steve Morse. If that helps clarify anything. Well, that's it, 13 songs. What do I think overall? Well, the production is uniformly excellent, as it has been since they started working with Bob Ezrin. It's clear. It's got the necessary bite to it. It's got the necessary warmth to it. It's not overly compressed. There is excellent separation of instruments still. The instruments are distinct. It's just a typical Ezrin even production, or at least typical of what he's been doing since Now What. So there's absolutely nothing to complain about there. Now it clocks in at about an hour. This when I see that, I sometimes get slightly worried, given that that length of record album does far too often indicate there's going to be some filler in it. I don't think there is anything. There's no filler on this in particular, but again, it's just one of those things that makes me nervous, I suppose. But if you look at it from a point of comparison, if you go back to the latest releases of Uriah Heep and Saxon, also legacy bands, also producing excellent new music at this stage of their career, they're keeping their albums around the 45-minute mark, I think, if I recall correctly. Contrast that to Iron Maiden, another legacy act. And, so I think their last two have been double CD releases. And I have them. I have listened to them. And I've gone to sleep listening to them both in places. Now, nothing like that here. This just flies by. And if releasing roughly an hour, slightly more than an hour's worth of music is, if I'm right, is a risk, then they've avoided the pitfall, shall we say. There is no, I won't allow. I don't think there's anything remotely approaching filler on this whatsoever. The other thing that strikes me is that, especially since since Whoosh, they've been writing shorter songs. Okay, I know that was just effectively the last album of new studio material, and I have heard people say that they'd like to hear them writing more, lengthier pieces, more adventurous stuff. And I do get that. I really do. But I suppose ultimately it comes down to whatever they're writing, is it any good or not? And I have to say this is full of quality. So personal preferences to one side. To me, I was really impressed the way Gillan sounds on this. I think he's long ago accepted his limitations. And he's, I say, singing within himself, but he is aware of his limitations. And he's maybe finding other ways of expressing himself. And if we don't have the range, the vocal range that we once had, I think there's a lot of feeling and there's a lot of warmth in this performance here. For my money, very impressive. Very impressive. And for everybody is. The rhythm sections sound really good. Some really inventive playing and ideas going on. Don Airey continues his dominance in the sound. Again, it's not just the Hammond playing, and that's the synth, the Moog, all that sort of stuff. He's very prominent, and you do get a feeling they enjoyed this. Well, as I indicated earlier on, I was perhaps expecting slightly more of a departure, which got me thinking why maybe that didn't transpire as much. Is it that perhaps Airey and Glover are, more integral to the writing process than perhaps I imagined? I don't know. Or is it just that the integration, Simon McBride's integration, has been so seamless? If you look at it from a different perspective, there is nothing on here that would have been inconceivable with Steve Morse in the band. Not as was the case with Perpendicular, where all of it was just about inconceivable with Blackmore in the band. No, there's nothing like that here. The other side of the coin is, with the exception of Bleeding Obvious, there's nothing on here that you would say, that came from Morse. His uniqueness, his eclectic tastes, influence of that is missing. He could write a straightforward rock song, I know. And maybe these are more straightforward rock songs than was generally the case, when he was in the band. But I somehow, and again, I don't know. I really don't know why. But I was almost expecting a shift from, as dramatic as, say, from the Battle Rages on to Perpendicular or something like that. And we didn't get that. I said this is a very natural continuation from Whoosh, etc., etc. But yes, they've integrated McBride very well, I have to say. Again, no idea the level of his involvement in the songwriting process. Absolutely none whatsoever. I've speculated that perhaps Glover and Airey had more or just as much influence as Morse. I don't know. But I suppose we'll see in the future. And again, these are not criticisms; they're just merely observations. And perhaps as we are getting a new album, maybe interesting to see if there is any great stylistic shift or anything, or the new guitar player becomes more prominent. I guess we'll find out. But again, as I said, these are just observations. I really enjoy this. I really do. Is it a band classic? Well, even after a year, I have to say I'm a little unsure about that one. I will say this, that anybody who's seen my other videos will know already that I rate this superior to anything Mark 3, 4, 5, or Mark 1, 3, 4, or 5 ever did. Is it as good as Fireball? No. Is it as good even as the best parts of Perfect Strangers and the House of Blue Light? No. It's up there with the best of the Morse era, I think. I would certainly say Perpendicular was better, and I would probably also say Now What was a stronger effort than this. Certainly more varied efforts, both of them. And depending on the day, perhaps even whoosh. But it's up there. It really is. And yes, okay, I'm going to say it, although, it shouldn't really make any difference. It's either a good record or it isn't, but 50-odd years after their supposed prime, or their peak, that they're still able to produce music of this quality, I think is quite a remarkable achievement. But again, it shouldn't really matter, should it? It is, you're only as good as your last hit, as they used to say. A year plus living with it. I think the fact that I go back to it so often, not just to prepare for a review, but just to play and listen to it, I think speaks for itself. Very impressed. Really enjoy this. And again, I am looking forward I am impatiently looking forward, shall we say, to the next one. Well, that's my take on it. What do you think? Feel free to let me know, to comment, to share, to like, to subscribe, and all those good things. And until next time, I wish you well, and Maçhonquèrre.